Hey, my name is Brian, and I'm a cryptozoology researcher. I try to reach out to people who have stories and encounters of their own, and you won't believe what I believe I've discovered and put together. I thought I would run this by you, since you would not only believe me, but at least appreciate what I have to tell you. Here's what it is. I believe, based on the stories that I've heard, and the people that I've talked to, that there is some sort of cryptid vampire cult that exists deep within the Blue Ridge mountain range of the eastern United States. Let's talk about what it's not. A small group of people who claim they're vampires drinking blood. I'm specifically talking about a community of slender, undead-like cryptids that have been stealing livestock, leaving blood-drained corpses of animals behind. This includes cats, dogs, livestock, and fortunately, no humans as of yet. Apparently, judging by the several witnesses I've talked to and stories that I've heard, they all live deep within the caverns and tunnel systems of the Blue Ridge Mountains, here, ranging from North Carolina all the way up to Pennsylvania. How do I know this? Well, let's go over some of the stories that I've heard and the people that I've talked to. For each one of their identities, I will keep them anonymous, just to protect them. Just last summer, there was a husband and wife hiking around the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains, at least in the area in which they were talking about. They told me they witnessed in the evening time a tall white humanoid shape walking in the distance and seemed to almost look around as to make sure it wasn't being watched. It couldn't see the pair from the distance that it was at, and the wife and husband were at an advantage with ample tree coverage to conceal them, at least as need be. They told me that they witnessed this creature burrow itself under the ground. They described it as nearly 10 to 12 feet tall and extremely lanky, disproportionately so, not wearing any clothing, and having very long arms and legs, and a human-like torso and head. That's the best I got out of that. Now, let's move on to some of the other stories that relate to that. Not even 5 miles away from the location of the sighting by this couple is another woman that I spoke to, a widow with grown children who frequently visit to help her take care of the livestock. But as of lately, all of her livestock have been killed by something. Not eaten, not torn apart ravenously, but drained of blood in a typical vampire fashion. 2 large puncture wounds on the neck, and corpses completely void of any blood, or even fluid for that matter. Their eyes and mouth are dry, completely void of anything. While she is completely unaware of what could be the cause, I had a chance to speak to her son, who's around 35, who sometimes comes to stay with his mother to keep her company and help her take care of the animals. He told me firsthand that he saw something attacking one of the goats. He described it as almost looking like a Nosferatu-like creature. These were his words. He used the word Nosferatu because he said it looked like a goblin or a human with long, sharp teeth. I had asked him, "Do you mean like a vampire with fangs?" And he told me kind of, but each one of its teeth was sharp like fangs, like the entirety of its mouth, and then it had goblin-like ears, long and pointed, a bald head, and yellow reptilian eyes. The greatest look he got at it was when he shined his flashlight on it, when he'd heard noise outside at around 1 in the morning, noise going on in the animal den, so he went to investigate and saw that. His mother isn't really sure what to think about it. Very interesting. Now, let's move on to more sightings that I've gotten. An 18-year-old girl had reached out to me, who lived north of Asheville in Tennessee, not far from where all this stuff was going on, and said that she was goofing off, partying with a couple of her friends in the woods, when they found a tunnel. They said they tried to measure it as best they could, and said it was about 5 feet wide by 7 feet tall, and looked like it had been tunneled out and went deep into the earth at about a 45-degree angle, and then leveled out, going straight. Her and her friends tried exploring it, but only got maybe 30 feet in before getting a really bad feeling. She also mentioned about finding 2 dead does in that same area, probably within a quarter mile of that found tunnel, even though those were found first before finding that tunnel. They said that the doe looked like it had just fallen dead and that there's no reason the doe should have died. Full-grown deer, and living around there, you see deer often. They jump in front of your car. You're hardly, if ever, just going to find a deer that fell over dead. No signs of death or no reasoning for death, but they told me they didn't further investigate the corpse to see why or what. They just told me they didn't notice any bloodshed or anything wrong. They just thought it was weird to see 2 of them, as if they had just dropped dead. Then they find the tunnels. Then, moving up north to a town called Morgantown in West Virginia. Go south of there, and I got a chance to speak to an older man who claimed years ago he was attacked by what he described as a tall, white, vampire-looking thing. His descriptions and the fact that he would use the words vampire were very interesting. In fact, a lot of his descriptions even matched what many call the crawler, or as you creepypasta fans might know, as the rake. Although he didn't describe it crawling on all fours, said it was incredibly disproportionately long, 10 to 12 feet tall, very pointed ears, and had saber-tooth-like fangs protruding out of its mouth, bottom and top. Said it had black eyes, and a human-like head that was bald. Again, no genitalia, completely muscular, and pale white. This gentleman explained to me that he was going out to check on his horses in the evening and was blindly attacked by this creature. After nearly tearing his chest open, he fired his revolver at this thing. Pretty sure he hit it point blank, but didn't see any signs of damage or blood, and this thing ran off in the direction that it came, screaming bloody murder. Said he could hear it all the way as it trailed miles and miles back. This horrible, inhuman scream. He claims it was some sort of vampire demon and was not of this earth. He proceeded to talk about the encounter and told me that there are parts of the mountain that he outright refuses to go into for fear that there might be worse things out there. I had asked him to elaborate on what he meant by that, but he refused to answer. And even when speaking to him over the phone, he seemed pretty shaken up and had a very hard time talking about this subject, almost as if it not only traumatized him, but that he knew there was more to it. Unfortunately, I could not get those details out of him. I had also received an email from a gentleman who refused to give himself a name, but had lived in Georgia all his life, and was exploring part of the Blue Ridge on a trail, and said that he saw, and his words are, a naked, slender man crawling out of the ground and running off into the forest. Said it freaked him right out, and he booked it on back down the trail. He also told me that he refused to investigate further, not wanting to know where it crawled out of or what its intent was. Could this naked slender man that he was referring to be also talking about this vampire cryptid cult that I believe exists? Well, looking in the Charlotte area, all the way down to Greenville, and all the way up to Johnson City, it's almost what I would refer to as the Bermuda Triangle of vampire victims. Let me elaborate on that a little bit more for you. This is the area where I personally received stories and accounts, the most out of any other area, of people having dead livestock, or having their cats and dogs go missing, or even finding their cats and dogs completely dead, void of any blood, or, as I stated earlier, any fluid as well. The eyes completely dried up, mouth dry, things making no sense within only being dead of a few hours. Something, I don't know if they're related, but something is draining the blood out of all these animals. Could it be a chupacabra? I don't know, considering chupacabras are generally more in the Arizona, New Mexico area. So, does it have any correlation with these beings that apparently crawl and live out of the Blue Ridge Mountains? Does it have anything to do with the tunnels being dug and these creatures going in and out of them? I've received so many more reports, and it would take me so long to go through each one, But these are just a few of the stories that I thought I would share with you that I find are very interesting and cohesively support my theory of some sort of cryptid vampire group living in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Are they congregating and plotting the downfall of our civilization? Probably not. But, like Bigfoot, I do believe they live in packs or a group, and I do believe they are digging tunnels and living deep underground. But as the girl, whom I won't mention her name, the 18-year-old who I told you about when they had found the tunnel that was around 5 feet by 7, they even talked about being too scared to go further. And I asked her, is it because it was dark? And her words were that they had a really bad feeling. I again had asked her to instruct me further, like were they being watched? She said no, that it was this ominous feeling in the pit of their gut, as if something really bad would happen to them if they went further in. They had their phones and flashlights, so they could see, and they couldn't tell me where the tunnel led to, just that it led down deeper into the earth. There's a couple other things you should know before I end this email. North of Birmingham in Alabama, a few years back, I had received an email from an older hunter who had claimed to have found a dead black bear just lying on a side in the middle of the forest near a creek, and didn't tell me where or what creek, but said he found it weird that a black bear had just appeared to collapse and died. He further inspected the corpse and found that this black bear too had 2 incredibly large puncture wounds on its neck. He said the puncture wounds were easily the width of his entire pinky. So something with huge fangs or huge protrusive objects obviously punctured this thing's neck, although there was no blood anywhere on the ground or anywhere on this black bear. The wound was completely clean. He didn't mention anything about saliva or its eyes or anything being void of fluid. Said that it appeared to be drained of blood. This was years ago, before I had received more accounts of the things going on in the area, the tunnels, and the Nosferatu vampire-looking creatures that apparently are in the area. And now I'm really beginning to question just how far and large the region of these creatures' territory are, since I can only assume that black bear, now that I have a much more in-depth understanding, that it probably was these creatures. Something else that's interesting. I don't know if you've heard, but Taylor, Mississippi, not too far from this general region, is a huge dogman hotbed, just like Oklahoma. I don't know if there's any correlation at all between the two happenings, but there's just something about the climate, the area, the region of this part of the United States, just like the Pacific Northwest, that make it a cryptid hot zone. I can't be too sure myself. My hope is that you are able to read this to your viewers, and maybe someone can reach out to me if they've seen anything similar or have any experiences they'd like to share with me or you that fit in this category. I feel it's extremely irresponsible of our government to outright deny the existence of these things, and these poor people who have these experiences are in fear of ridicule or disbelief for coming forward with their own stories and warning other good citizens that these things are out there and that we need to be armed and we need to be safe and be able to protect ourselves thoroughly, because we have no idea what we're truly dealing with. We have no idea what they are capable of. And if there's any correlation between these creatures and other cryptids, God help us all. And on one final note, there seems to be a frequency increase between sightings. I mean, not only am I getting more and more stories and stuff sent to me, personally, but it seems like these things are revealing themselves more. Either that, or we just live in a day and age where people are much more vocal and are coming forward about current and past experiences. Either way, we need to be vigilant and keep our eyes around us. Always be aware of your surroundings, and to always carry a weapon on you. Never assume you're safe wherever you go.